Hey guys, I'm Dimension Jump. Today I'll be reviewing the first season of The Witcher, which was released back in 2019 for Netflix. Now, this show is based on the books and the game, I believe, or the games of the same name, and it mainly follows the main character, Geralt, who is a Witcher, who's basically an emotionless monster hunter, and yeah, that's kind of part of this season. There are, I would say, three main plot points in the first season. One of them being Geralt's, the other two being Yennefer, who's this sorceress, and Ciri, who's the princess of the the kingdom of Sintra, I believe that's the name. And each character all have their own stories that kind of intertwine depending on which part of the season you might be watching. So, for Geralt's plot point storyline, he's basically, because he's a monster hunter, because he's a witcher, he goes to various locations on the world called the continent, and it's basically he basically just is asked to he's basically asked to find a monster, defeat it, and then be paid in gold. For Ciri, she's basically fleeing from her hometown or from her kingdom after it gets not abandoned, overrun. I think that's the best term. Overrun by a neighboring kingdom, and with Yennefer, she throughout her storyline becomes a really powerful sorceress, and all of these plot points are seen out of order in a sense. So, what they do with a timeline, it's just that each plot, as I said before, each plot point kind of intertwines with each other in various parts of the season. So, Geralt, I would say, I would say Geralt's more of the present day. I would say Ciri is more of the future, and Yennefer is more of the past. I would say, in terms of how their storylines move throughout the season, and then Yennefer catches up to Geralt in terms of her where she is in the timeline, and then both Yennefer and Geralt catch up to Ciri in her part of the story. And yeah, I would say the first season can be a bit confusing even by my standards when I talked about it for a bit, because if you watch it for the first time, it it can be really confusing. Of okay, there's this character who's in this episode or in this scene of an episode, but then they reappear in another episode in a later scene, and it's kind of like that because there's some characters like the Queen of Sintra. She appears in the first episode, and then she appears in a later episode, um, which is the past, where she meets Geralt, and it's when the Child of Surprise happens, and the Child of Surprise, from my understanding, is if something unexpected happens, then I don't know. I don't know how to explain it because it's kind of confusing, and and yeah, it's just one of those things that you have to watch a couple of times or play the games or read the books to have a better understanding of. And overall, I would say that the first season of The Witcher, is somewhat interesting. I do like the locations of the world. I do, because it goes from, like, the Kingdom of Citra um to a pub or an inn that Geralt's at, or to where Yennefer's at, because she's studying at a school for sorcerers or sorceresses, and yeah, and they all have their own laws and backstories. So, like, for the for where Yennefer's at, it's said that it was built by elves, I think, during the Great Convergence or something, or the Convergence of the Spheres, or something like that. And magic in this universe is called chaos, and that's really interesting because like magic in other shows or films is just called magic. like in the TV show Merlin, that's called magic, but with this in The Witcher, it's called chaos. And that's quite interesting. Like, you take a concept like magic and kind of turn it on its head. And there's in the show it says certain spells can't really be used, like fire skills. It kind of it's kind of because of the nature of it, you can't really use it, and because fire spells are so destructive and stuff like that. And yeah, and some of the monsters are really creative in their own right. Like, there's a thing in the second episode. I think it's a goat man. I think, and that is all like the head and stuff. It's all prosthetics, and that's really cool because if it was like another TV show or a film, that'll probably be a guy in a mocap suit. But because it's prosthetics, it's really believable looking, and and again, there's a monster in I think episode 3 or 4 where it's just this sort of almost human monster looking thing, where it's just this monster with like long arms, this weird looking face, and this piercing shriek, and a lot of it, and the entire thing is prosthetic based, and it's really fun. And as I said before, if this was another TV show or movie and it was released and it was made by a studio or a different studio, that'd probably be CGI and again another guy in a mocap. And because it's all prosthetics, it's really fun. And there was this typical CGI stuff when it comes to a lot of the other stuff, other monsters and stuff. For instance, there's an episode towards the later half of the season or towards the end where Geralt is requested to help find a dragon, and when we do see the dragon, it doesn't really look really good. It kind of feels like early 2000s 2010 CGI, because to me it kind of looks like the dragon from Merlin, but only when he's being shown in the daytime. It kind of looks like that to me when it comes to dragons in The Witcher. But everything else I do really enjoy, and I do like a lot of the chemistry a lot of the characters have with each other, like with Geralt and Yennefer because when they first meet, it's kind of weird. Not weird. I would say it's more of Geralt wanting to save his friend more than anything else. Then throughout the show, they kind of warm up to each other, and you can clearly see that we can see that in season 2, which we'll probably talk about in next week's review. And I do like another chemistry that I do like with some of the characters is Geralt and the Bard. I forgot his name. I'll probably remember it in. Oh, Jaskier. That's his name. Jaskier. I do like Geralt's chemistry with Jaskier and vice versa, because Jaskier is a bard, and throughout the show he tells of, or he sings stories of the accomplishments that Geralt has done. Be that have some slight tweaks here and there, and this brought about, I would say, probably the most famous song in the show, "Toss a Coin to Your Witcher," which is possibly a really well-known song in the show. And if you know the song, you're probably thinking about it right now because I talked about it. And yeah, I do really like how witches in the show aren't really aren't treated as well as other people, because they are bred to have no emotions, meant to fight monsters, stuff like that. So I do like how in the first episode, Geralt is shunned by other people, and then a few episodes later, after defeating another monster we see off screen, he has people, excited to see him and stuff like that, and that's really cool. You really can see, how certain people's ideals of a person change over time, and that's really fun and interesting. And I do enjoy the whole. I think the first season is interesting, bit complicated, but I think season 2 does address some of the things which I'll talk about in next week's review of season 2 of The Witcher. So overall, the first season of The Witcher is fine. I think it does a decent job of. I think it did. I think for what it is, it does somewhat of a good job of focusing on three characters with their own stories, and then coming up to the conclusion of the first season where Geralt meets Ciri, and yeah, and then season 2 they're trying to go to another location and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's been my review for the first season of The Witcher. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.